I was always looking for ways to, get music onto the farm and combine it with the wine. And eventually we organized with the Drakenstein municipality, we organized a concert. And I don't know if you're familiar with Heidelberg. It's the current spice route. And it's got these lovely lawns. It's right next to Fairview. And it's got these lovely lawns with a spectacular view of Table Mountain.
Hi, Cerina. It's so lovely to meet you here on Zoom.
Yeah, it's same here. I'm very excited to have a chat with you.
You are the winemaker of Cecilia Wines.
Yeah.
Yeah, and tell me the story behind your label and how did you start making wine?
I had music as a subject in school, and I loved it, and it was studying music was a very strong option after school. Yeah. But I had this wild desire of being involved with farming. So that kept bugging me. I grew up in Paarl, so it was in the winelands, and that got me thinking that maybe wine is a way of being involved with farming, but because it's it's something that I can go and study, it could make up for the fact that I didn't grow up on a farm. And I also thought that I didn't know much about wine at that stage, but there is an artistic element to wine. A lot of people say wine is art. So I thought it can be plausible. And I went to Elsenburg Agricultural College just outside Stellenbosch. And as I learned about wine, I was just fascinated by the world of wine. It is so interesting, and you can go to so many different places and meet so many interesting people and taste lovely wines and so on. So I loved it. But then as I was doing the wine, I kept missing the music. So the idea was to keep studying and maybe do some extracurricular courses with music. But there wasn't much time. You're either in the one or in the other.
Oh, yeah.
So for the first few years, I focused on wine, traveled around the world, did vintages in different countries. And then when I got back and started working full-time as a winemaker in South Africa, there was a little bit more time. So I continued with lessons. And then I got involved with a street children project in Paarl. And I thought I would help them just do a bit of music. So I tried to teach them to sing and so on. And while there, I realized, I saw firsthand the talent that these youngsters had. But I also saw that, it's not the case everywhere, but you have people who's got the heart for the project. But if there's not enough resources, they get stuck either spending a lot of time trying to organize funds in order to run the project. Yeah. And then the actual work gets left behind, or they focus on the work and there's not enough focus on the funds and taking care of all those relationships and administration. And because I was in the wine business and the story is such an important part of wine, I started thinking that maybe that could be a way of me combining these two passions.
Yeah.
And then so that idea started to, it grew a bit. And then in 2006, I was winemaker at Heidelberg in Paarl at that stage, and we had a few vineyards coming on stream where that didn't have they weren't allocated for a wine at that stage. So I spoke to the owner. He was a German and very open for new ideas, and it was nice to pitch something to him. He was always excited about new things. So the long story is he was very happy to to do something. And then we joined forces with Street Smart South Africa. They operate out of Cape Town, and a friend of my boss at that stage was one of the board members there. So that's where we started off at the beginning. And then so it was a new wine that we were going to put out there, and it had to have a name. And I can't remember when I learned it, but at some stage I realized, or I don't know whether I knew it at that stage. But anyway, long story short, Cecilia is my middle name. So my grandmother was Cerina Cecilia, and that's me as well. And startCecilia, or startCecilia, as the Italians talk about, she was the patron saint of musicians. So it worked very well to name the wine Cecilia. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then so that's on the one side for the name. But for the whole period that I was there at Heidelberg at that stage, and that was now the middle 2000s. I was always looking for ways to get music onto the farm and combine it with the wine. And eventually we organized with the Drakenstein municipality, we organized a concert. And I don't know if you're familiar with Heidelberg. It's the current spice route, and it's got these lovely lawns. It's right next to Fairview, and it's got these lovely lawns with a spectacular view of Table Mountain. So it's really it's an exquisite spot, and the sunsets there are to die for. So we had an open air concert in 2006 where the brass band of the University of Stellenbosch joined forces with a music school in Paarl, and they had this concert on our lawns. And I remember the evening the afternoon when the students brought their instruments. It was so exciting to see them open up, put all their, the black cages with the instruments in the winery. And it was one of those moments where, a little bit of a dream comes together. Here were all these instruments in the winery being packed out and so on. So that was great. So at that stage, so we had that concert. And the university were really nice. There's a farm school between the two farms, and the afternoon they got all the children from the school, and they demonstrated their instruments to them, so the children could see what a trumpet looks like and how it works and so on. It was amazing. Yeah. So that was the first concert, and then so the wine was coming along at that stage. It was we were blending and trying to get everything in order. So I phoned the conductor of the brass band, and at that stage I'd been continuing with private piano lessons. I had lessons with Sarada Temming. She's a very well-known organist in South Africa, but she's a brilliant pianist as well. And I was very fortunate to be able to have lessons with her, and it opened up a world of sound to me that was it's just amazing to hear such a talented pianist play. So and so I was practicing a Mozart piano concerto for 10 years at that stage. That's how long it takes if you have a little bit of time everywhere here and there to practice and so on. So I phoned the conductor of the brass band, and I asked her whether she's got a connection for me that I could speak about launching this wine with this piano concerto. And she put me in contact with Colvin Matthey, who was at that stage, he was conducting the Stellenbosch University Philharmonic, but he was also the conductor of Cape Town Chamber Orchestra. And that was the perfect orchestra to it's a little bit bigger than an ensemble. I think there were about 20 instruments at that stage. And he was quite keen to do it as well. I was very surprised because I had no experience playing an orchestra, or playing a concerto. So I think he was very brave. But so we did it, and so in October 2007 we had another open air concert, but this time I was the pianist. And it was wonderful. It is one of those moments that will stay with me forever. I hope one day we can do it again. But it was magical. It was magical. I'm sure there has been much better performances of Mozart's Concerto in F, but it was still and what was also very, very special afterwards. It was someone that accompanied a friend of mine, and she said to me, she had a goosebump moment when I started playing, because she realized this is now a dream for me that's coming true. And it was very exciting. And so that was the launch of Cecilia. And then but at that stage I had just I'd met my now husband. And he was off he moved to another wine region, the Willefranz River on the west coast, in 2009. And it's not always the first place that people think of in terms of South African wine. But at that stage, it was an important relationship, so I looked for options close by, and a few weeks after he started, I got a position at a winery in the area as well. So by the end of 2009, we were both in the Willefranz River, and at that stage, so I was making wine at a large cooperative, so it was very different to what I was used to.
But what about your wine then? The Cecilia wine?
Yes. No, getting to that. When I was in the interview, I told I said to the board of directors, look, I've got this wine baby. I would like to bring it. It is my wine baby. The proceeds is not for personal gain. So can I bring it? And they were quite accommodating. And the only requirement they had was that the funds be spent in the area, which I was very happy to do. I mean, to me, it doesn't matter who you help, as long as someone has helped.
Yeah.
But it took very long. So that was 2009. At the beginning, the first 2 or 3 years, I trucked grapes from the Boerland. So I had a Land Rover, and on a Friday night I would drive down with the Land Rover and the trailer, pick up the grapes on the Saturday morning, and then harvest them over the weekend, and then on Monday morning.
How long is that trip?
Well, with the Land Rover, it's a bit longer than what it can be, but it depends on where the grapes are. But anything between 2 and 4 or 3, 4 or 5. I think maximum. No, it could be 5 hours, some of those trips. But my parents are still in Paarl, so it was. So I would stop over there, sleep, and then drive, and then get back, and so on. Amazing. But then it was towards 2011, we started working 2 shifts, and I was the only winemaker at the winery. So it became. It became very difficult to do that anymore. So I phoned Rosa Creer one year, and I asked her whether she knew of vineyards around me or closer to me, which I could use for Cecilia. And she put me in connection with Henk Lang, and it was one of those. I think it was one of those pivotal moments where. You have the feeling that something has been prepared long before you started needing it, because he was his farm was about, on the tar road, it was on the N7, it was about half an hour from the winery that I was working at, and he had this lovely old bushvine Pinotage vineyard that was on record, it was planted in 1981, but according to him, it was there since he was a little boy. It was just not, in those early days, the paperwork were not as up to scratch as what it is now. So it's a lot older than what it is on paper. But so I started making the Pinotage, which for several years was the only wine in the portfolio. So it took, so I think it was about 2014. So the first vintage was 2012, but that was only a few bottles. So not really something that I sold commercially. And then from 2013, so it was about 2015, I had wine to sell again after the whole change and the vineyard change and all of that. And also, I was working at a cooperative at that stage. So the first year or so, I put the grapes through the co-ops, the co-ops equipment, but it's very big. So it didn't. I wasn't happy with the results. So I had to invest in small batch equipment, which and at that stage I was also busy with a Master of Wine. So at 1 year I would spend every cent I had on traveling overseas and tasting wine, and then the next year I take a break from the studying, and then I invest in equipment, and eventually by 2015 there was wine again that could be sold. So I hooked up with a music teacher in Vredendal, and she and I sponsored from the sales of the wine. I sponsored her to give music appreciation lessons to one of the farm schools that delivered grapes to the winery I was working at. Yeah, and it was lovely to see how the children enjoyed the music and so on. So that. So that I did for a few years, and then at the end of 2017, so I got married in 2010, so that worked out well. Yeah. But and then in 2017, my husband was invited by a winery here in Citrusdal to become a cellar master, and I had to move with him, obviously. So again, I had to come and say, look, I've got this wine daily. Can I bring it along? Because now I need a winery. I've got all these bits of equipment that's too big for the garage. So I need a winery that I could work in. And so the owners of Picanistra Wine Company was very accommodating, and they also have fair trade wine. So giving back to the community and that philosophy is very much part of how they are put together. So it was a good fit. So I finished, and then also at that stage I was pregnant with our firstborn. So I finished vintage 2018, well, half of it in trust two winemakers to have the baby during vintage. So 2018 was a bit in between, half still in the Olifants River, and then in the hospital. And then as the time passed here, a couple of other things, a couple of other opportunities arose. One of them being an importer in the UK, Naked Wines, coming on board with. It was in the first year of COVID. They established a COVID fund for South African winemakers, and I applied. At that stage, I knew that I had to expand. Either I won't say go big, but you had to. It's difficult to have a portfolio of only one wine, but it was all I had capacity for where I was. But now with all the changes that had happened since, there was room for adding to the range. And so I applied for their COVID fund, and they selected two wines. So it was a Syrah in the Cecilia range, and then a more affordable rosé, which I had to then call something. And then thinking about a name for the second range, or sister range, I like to call it. I decided on Windband, and what I put on the back label was wind instruments you can use in all sorts of genres. I mean, you've got phones in rock bands, and you can have a very classical wind ensemble. You can have a brass band, all sorts of different kinds of music is made with wind bands. So the idea was to have a sister wine for Cecilia that is aimed at a wider public. It's very accessible wine. So there's a red, a white, and a rosé. And meant to be enjoyed every day of, so there was a fairly big expansion for me. It was quite a lot of changes, but that gave us the momentum for something that I had been thinking of already in the Olifantsriver. When I was there already, I drafted the constitution for a NPO. And then when the Naked Wines deal came through, we were not quite there yet, but it was at a point. Yeah, I could think maybe this can be bigger, and maybe we could do something substantial. What I had done at that stage when I arrived here was I went to it's a school in the formal informal settlement. It's about 1,000 learners, and there's no music teaching, nothing. So I started a choir there, but now I was doing a choir once a week, but it's not my training. I mean, I've been singing in choirs for many years, but you have to do something often, and if you want to really be good at teaching it, I think it's one thing doing it that you can win, but to teach something that takes skill, which I don't think I have. So I was frustrated with doing little bits and not being able to do something substantial until these other developments came about. So the constitution was needed a few adjustments to fit the scenario. I had a friend that came through and said he would help me set up the company, and it was so it was very quick, and that was there. And then we advertised for before that, so my idea was to employ someone full-time who can focus on the music, and me with the wine and the other things, and the organizing takes care of the administration and the organization of it. So the person doing the music doesn't have to worry about that part. Going back to what I realized way back when. And then as I was talking with people in the community and trying to figure out whether there's a need for this, I was sure there was a need. I knew that there's a need, and even if people don't realize it, if they get involved with it, they can. You can't fight the benefits of music. It just you can't.
Definitely.
So someone heard about what we were doing, and then Pebbles, through them, Pebbles Project contacted us. So we joined forces with them. Are you familiar with Pebbles Project?
No, not at all. What are they?
It's also an NPO. They originated from Stellenbosch, and they started taking providing a service for children on farms in terms of daycare, aftercare. After school. So they would, and they've evolved to a point where they've branched out to citrus dole. They're here, but here they now focus on the citrus farms, and to Hermanus and so on. And they've got a mobile librarian, but early child education was what they started with, and they also focused on nutrition for children and so on. But now they do all sorts of services, and they are developing towards towards helping these youngsters that's ready to leave school to try and help them find decent jobs and so on. So they wanted to expand. They wanted to introduce music on some of their farms. So they ended up subcontracting our teacher on a few of their farms for a music program. So that was very nice to, from the start, to be involved with them as well. And then there were a few other places that also, another school that asked us to. So the teacher has got a very tall order. She visits a different entity every day of the week. Of course, with COVID, it was difficult.
Yeah.
But this year we and the other thing was, it was new. I mean, we had ideas, but no one knew how it was gonna evolve. So this year is nice in a sense that COVID is a bit settled in terms of, the schools seem to be managing all right. I don't foresee that we'll have the closures that we had last year. And now we have a better idea also of what are the challenges of the different places that she works at, and so on. So we took on 2 more farm schools that also they have no music training, but we focus on the ground phase, the grade 1, 2, and 3, because they're a bit easier to to just fit something into their schedule. It's a bit more difficult in the higher grades because they've got tight schedules, and it's a bit difficult. I'm sure eventually we'll get there, but for now we focus on the ground phase, or those classes, and then what came out in one of the conversations as we were putting things together at the end of 2019 was because one of my dreams is to eventually have an orchestra that could play with me again or with someone else, and then launch a new set of Cecilia and Wind Band Wines in another concert. That was the idea for each vintage, but that's been too difficult to pull off. The focus with the music project is to expose as many children. For now, we've been focusing on the children, but to expose as many children as possible to as many of the positive attributes of music, and to be able to nurture, if we see someone that's got talent, to nurture them and to try and help them develop that talent. So in order to do that, we've got recorder groups at all of so we've got about 7 now this year, 7 groups of about 10 recorders, and that's an easy way of teaching them basic music literacy, and also filtering and seeing who's got talent. So that's, and then it's going to take a long time, but at the end of last year we were approached by a marching band from the VGK church here in town, and they asked us to teach them music, the notes. But when we got there, we weren't instruments. So now we are looking for instruments, and I'm very excited to be able to say that on Tuesday I collected our first 2 trombones that was donated by the University of Stellenbosch. So that's very exciting. I don't know who's going to teach it, but we've got the instruments, so I'm sure the teacher will come. And the other great thing about, I say it not with disrespect to all the terrible things that happened because of COVID, but the one positive for us because of COVID was how everything went online. So because that allows us. So I one of my teachers from school and after school, her son became a cellist. And so he's in his 20s now, and they're very well versed with technology and so on.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of last year, I spoke to her or to him via her, and trialed cello lessons online. And it works.
Yeah.
So the model I'm hoping that we can develop is to, have people anywhere to teach these instruments, and then our teacher or teachers eventually facilitates the lesson, so they can, they guide the child to do what the trainer or the musician on the other side says, and then every month or quarter or however, we either take the children to the for a physical lesson, just to make sure that the technique is on the right track, which I think is very
amazing.
And there are many people doing it, so it's definitely not new. It's going to take time, but
it's possible.
I'm used to things taking long. So okay.
When I listen to your story, you are very patient. But I want to ask now. So all the proceeds that comes from Cecilia Wine, that goes to this music education.
No, not anymore. It well, I mean, you need money to get the to do the wine business.
Yeah.
So so I made a few calculations, and based on that, 10% of the price of the income of the sales price of a bottle of Cecilia, and 5% of the sales price of a bottle of Wind Band goes to the foundation.
But that is wonderful. Yeah,
I felt it important to put a figure to it, because I think the more clarity there is about these things, the more at ease people are. And I mean, the wine is not the only. I mean, as I explained now, the wine is not. There isn't enough income from the wine yet to carry the whole, to carry what we are doing.
Yeah.
I do hope that eventually I believe it will. It's going to take time though.
Well, you've done so much already. I can just imagine it will.
But we're at the beginning of a very, very, very exciting chapter, and that is that we're branching out into music therapy. So from the 1st of April, we've got a full-time music therapist working for the foundation. And that came about it was on the Master of Wine program. I met a guy he was from Sweden. I mean, at that stage, I didn't remember what he was doing, but he was from Sweden. And then in 2018, just as I'd started, just after the move here, we had Cape Wine, and we were presenting. I was helping my husband presenting some wines, and in walks this guy who I was on the course with. And since then, I worked with him on the wines of Pikenierstof at that stage, and we won some tenders in Sweden. But he knew about my wine project. And his company is part of a group, Vingruppen, in Sweden. And at the end of last year, or I think it was about end of October or beginning November or so, they launched a sustainability fund. And he mentioned it to me and asked me whether I would like to present a proposal for it. And, as many of the other ideas took time and were brewing. The thing that was brewing for the last 2 years was that we need exposing children to music is one thing, but what I really wanted to try and see is if music therapy, or if the benefits of music, can somehow alleviate some of the issues. Or I know we can't fix things like fetal alcohol syndrome, but I'm convinced that one can use music very constructively in addressing some of the issues that people on the alcohol spectrum have. So that desire has been brewing for a while. And then when he asked me whether I want to present something, I was ready. So I pitched.
Yeah.
And just before Christmas, he phoned me and he said they've decided to grant us the funds for that project. So we've just completed. But towards the end of February, we did some interviews, and we've appointed a music therapist that's coming to join us for a fixed period of time, and during which I hope the wine and all sorts of other means of funds will come aboard, so that we can continue the position, that it doesn't stop when our current funding ends, and I'm convinced it will. But yeah, so she and I mean the things that they do with music is, I love to hear how she explains what happens, and her starting point is going to be problem children. Okay. So we will be identifying children through the current music program. Well, because our music teacher knows the children, she knows which ones are maybe a bit difficult or has got problems with attention span and so on, and we will try and get them together, and then have music therapy sessions with them on the one hand, and then on the other hand we're going to have focused groups. And we're working with the University of Stellenbosch, the University of Pretoria. That's the postgraduate course where the music therapists are trained, and we've had several discussions with the head of the faculty there. So we're going to collaborate with them, and then also with the Foundation of Alcohol-Related Research in South Africa, FAR SA. Their CEO is, I've had several discussions with her over the years about music and alcohol, and she's brilliant,
really?
in terms of her knowledge of, people on the alcohol spectrum. So between those three entities, I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to produce something that could benefit people that has been adversely affected by alcohol. Yeah.
But it's great that you actually use wine in this way, because I think it's also then raising the awareness, because you're using the story for people to understand what it is that you're doing. And I think this is so important, that and also this connection. I mean, I really think, I've spoken to a few winemakers, and they all say the same thing. This wine doesn't have, it's not a fixed recipe, and you cannot predict. There's so many variables, and it's the same really as with music, and it's the same with art. You cannot. It's different people, and now you are going in the community, and you are really looking for these children who all have this ability. They have abilities, and they.
Yeah.
They get the opportunity, and I love this. I love the links that's being put together through this whole project you are doing. Congratulations! I think it's wonderful, really.
No, I didn't. Where we are now, I never would have fathomed 5 years ago. It's one day at a time, and it's here you see an opportunity and you try and make the most of it. Some work out, some don't. But I really hope that, and also the way, and it depends. The feedback I get depends very much on the perspective of the person you're talking to. There are some people that are very interested in it. If you talk to connoisseurs, they're sometimes afraid that because there's a charity involved, that the wine is not is not. So that's quite interesting. But yeah, so it depends very much. Some people, they hear about it via the wine, but they're not really wine drinkers. And I've had people like that. They say to me, look, I want to join the newsletter. I don't want to buy wine, but I just don't want to know what's going into the music. But also, even the way it's set up, I'm not very good at asking. So the way it's set up is because when you buy the bottle, whether you're worried or interested in the charity or not, the funds are there anyway. So the funds are anyway being channeled to the charity. So as long as there's movement in the wine, there is a stream of revenue. And there are
can people just enroll in or just write in to get this newsletter? Or apply for this newsletter?
Yes,
how does it work?
Yes,
is it on the website?
Yeah, it's on the website. Well, yeah, the website is it needs a bit of. I mean, the basics are there. It's not. I'm a bit behind with newsletters, but there's been so much happening that.
Oh, okay.
I haven't, and it was vintage now also. So and I mean there's 2 little children here as well. So I need it's quite a tricky thing balancing all of it. So I am a bit behind on but the contact details and everything is there, and the online shop is. I mean shipping is free, and it's shipped all across the country. So that's the easiest way, and then it's exported to a few countries. So but most of that information is on the website, but there's a contact form and email address. So if anyone is looking for something that's not there, they can just pop an email and I'll be happy to answer.
Oh, that's amazing. But now, Cecilia, tell me, okay, so you've done all this now, and you still have your label, but do you still work as a winemaker for a wine farm as well?
Well, no, winemaker. I'm only winemaker for Cecilia and Wind Band. Okay. But I do help with the marketing of Pietermaritzkloof wines. So that helps. That helps the fund Cecilia. It's going to take a while before it's funding itself. That's going to take a while. So so I help with the marketing of Pietermaritzkloof. And I really enjoy that part of the business, because for many years I wanted to have more contact with the market, and for just reason, it was just, I mean, the few years in the Willifant server, because your bottle product there is a small percentage of the total output of the winery. You don't have that much interaction with consumers. So when we moved here, it was great to to be involved with all of that, and I really enjoy it. And it also I make a lot of blends for customers, and I really like to try and that process of understanding what your customer wants. And then trying to fulfill that, and to keep fulfilling that, because it's one thing getting it right once, but it's something, it's something different doing it continuously. It doesn't always just depend on the taste of the wine. Unfortunately, there's so many other factors that plays a role there. So it's a very, very interesting. I'm involved with the marketing of Pietermaritzkloof, but winemaking. The blending part of the customers for Pietermaritzkloof there, I still use my winemaking background as well. But harvesting is for Cecilia and Wind Band.
Oh, okay. But now, tell me, what is your wish for the future?
Oh, the wish for the future. Well, that all of these things. There are many. How much time do you have? On the winemaking front, I would really like to see the wines get a wider footprint and be considered, as a a good choice in the South African context. I mean, there are a lot of good wines. I think the South African industry has never been as exciting as it is now. There are so many independent winemakers making great wines. So it would be really nice for the wines to be able to stand on their own and have their own right of existence. And then on the project side, I mean, I would really like to see our community just enjoying music, whether it's with singing or whether it's playing instruments. And as I said to you earlier, to have a concert one year where we can, at least in the first program, have some of these youngsters play as well. And I would like to conduct that also. That I would like to do as well.
Wow.
So and then of course on the music therapy, if we can get to a point where we can put some solid research, not necessarily research in terms of quantitative research, but if we can produce qualitative research that establishes a link between alcohol disorders and music, that to me would be one way of the whole thing coming full circle. And then on the other hand, I would really like to have a bit more time to practice and to play more with these children. I would love to do that and to teach one of the instruments. I learned the violin way back when, and as I told you, the cello, but it's all, I begin and then all the other things, just become too much, and there isn't time to somehow be physically involved with their music education, not just as the organizer of of a lot of this. And then one day I would like to try my hand at the MW again, but that's gonna need. I have a few ideas of how to do it, but that's gonna take a lot of time. But that I want to do one day as well.
Well, your dreams your wishes seem to come true. So I'm sure all of this that you're naming now will come true. But that's amazing. I mean, it's wonderful work that you're doing, and and it's great projects that you have that you put together for children. I think this is something that we've also realized during the pandemic, how important music and art is, and art education is. So it's great that it's available, and that it's not just available for affluent families, but it's also on the farms where they don't have the means.
When I think back now at my childhood, I mean, there were many days that I didn't want to practice piano, and if it wasn't for my mother, who said you have to practice, and for her doing extra work in order to be able to pay for the lessons, I wouldn't have had the opportunity to later in my life come around and realize what this how much value there is in that. And they don't have to become full-time musicians, as long as they can sing with their children, or
exactly and just experience just experience the music.
So I'm very grateful for that, and that's what because of that we're trying to do what we do.
But that's great. But now, Cerina, I just have one more question for you. What I do is I ask people to do a shout out for restaurants or coffee shops in their area to give some exposure as well to businesses. So do you have a coffee shop or a restaurant in your area that you can do a shout out for?
Oh, can I? I've got 3 that I can think of straight away.
Yes,
the one is it was a coffee shop. It used to be Salome's Grapevine, And with the pandemic, she was in town, she closed down, and recently she's opened again. So you drive right through town towards Sirius, on the not far out of town. And there is a lovely deck and a guest house or guest farm where she now has her coffee shop again. So that would be the coffee shop stop.
Yeah.
And then restaurant-wise is Hebron. It's the chef there is called Steve Eldroyd. Yeah. He spent quite a few years in the UK, and he makes the most interesting dishes. It's always lovely to have dinner at Hebron. So that would be the restaurant. And then if you're passing through, you're on the N7 and you're on the way either to Namibia or towards Cape Town past us, Pieterneerskloof's tasting room with the tall deli is right on the pass. So there you can buy, you can taste, and Cecilia's Wines is also there. So you can taste Pieterneerskloof and Cecilia and Winman Wines at the toll. And you can buy a lovely roasted cook or a flatbread.
Oh, wow.
You can sit on the lawns. That's where I think we'll have the next concert. There's these lovely lawns with a view of the valley. So if you can spend a lot of time there, or you can just have a quick break and get something for the road and just have a nice view for.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
So those would be the 3 stops if I have to think quickly.
That makes me miss home now very much. Cerina, it was now so lovely to talk to you. And I wish you all the best with your projects, and may all your wishes come true.
Thank you very much. Maybe in 10 years' time we can have another interview.
A recap,
if there were some developments.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, wonderful.
Okay. Thanks very much. I enjoyed it. It was really lovely. Thanks.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.